Stop her right now. Don't let that woman leave this lobby. Gregory Hale's voice exploded across the marble entrance of the Crown Meridian Hotel, so loudly that conversations died mid-sentence, and every head near the chandelier-lit reception desk snapped toward the black woman standing beside the espresso bar with a coffee cup still in her hand. Naomi Carter didn't move. She didn't argue. She didn't even blink. At exactly 8:14 p.m. on a rainy Thursday night in downtown Chicago, the luxury hotel lobby that normally smelled like polished cedar and expensive perfumes suddenly felt charged, like the air itself knew something ugly had just begun. Gregory stormed around the front desk with the confidence of a man who believed authority would protect him from consequences. "Call the police," he barked again, pointing directly at Naomi. "She stole from one of our VIP suites." A collective murmur rolled through the lobby. Guests froze near the elevators. A businessman lowered his rolling suitcase. A woman in a cream-colored trench coat slowly reached for her phone. Near the entrance, a young valet whispered, "What's going on?" Naomi stood there in a black zip-up hoodie, fitted dark jeans, and plain white sneakers damp from the rain outside. No jewelry, no designer labels, no visible security. Nothing about her appearance matched the image Gregory Hale believed belonged inside one of the most expensive hotels in Illinois. And that was exactly why she dressed that way. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Naomi Carter. Gregory's jaw tightened when Naomi calmly lifted the paper coffee cup to her lips like she hadn't just been accused of theft in front of 50 people. "Ma'am," he snapped, his tone dripping with manufactured professionalism. "Hotel security footage shows you leaving the executive floor moments before a guest reported missing jewelry." Naomi tilted her head slightly. "Did you check the footage completely?" she asked softly. Gregory ignored the question. "Security is already on the way." The words landed like a performance. Loud, public, intentional. A blonde receptionist behind the desk folded her arms and stared at Naomi with visible suspicion, while another employee whispered something that made a bellman glance down awkwardly at the floor. Naomi noticed every look. She always noticed. She had seen those looks at 16 when a department store employee followed her through aisles without speaking. She saw them again at 24 when a realtor assumed she was applying for housekeeping work instead of buying a property. Different city, different people, same stare, same assumption. A middle-aged white couple near the lobby bar slowly backed away as though standing too close to Naomi might somehow involve them in the accusation. Meanwhile, Gregory straightened his suit jacket and raised his voice another level. "Until the police arrive, nobody lets her leave." That sentence changed the room. Not because of volume, because of what it implied. Naomi Carter was no longer being treated like a guest. She was being presented like a criminal exhibit in the center of the lobby. Yet somehow she remained perfectly still, standing there with the kind of calm that unsettled people more than anger ever could. And somewhere behind the reception desk, a young concierge named Elena Brooks quietly opened the hotel system on her monitor for the very first time that night and saw a name that made her stomach drop. Elena Brooks felt the blood drain from her face the second the executive profile finished loading on her screen. Her fingers froze above the keyboard as rows of restricted access credentials appeared one after another beside the name Naomi Carter. Owner-level clearance. Corporate override authority. Internal executive protocol access. Elena stared at the monitor like it had just exposed a secret the entire building was never supposed to see. Behind her, Gregory Hale was still talking loudly enough for half the lobby to hear. "People come in here every month trying to scam luxury hotels," he announced, pacing in front of Naomi like a prosecutor performing for a jury. "And they always act calm until security shows up." Naomi did not respond. She simply set her empty coffee cup down on a side table beside a white orchid arrangement and glanced toward the towering glass windows where rain streaked against the Chicago skyline. Her silence was beginning to bother people more than if she had screamed. A young couple near the elevators exchanged uneasy looks. One man muttered under his breath, "This feels wrong." Another guest quietly stepped farther away from Gregory instead of Naomi. Elena swallowed hard and looked back at the screen. The system timestamp showed Naomi had remotely checked into the penthouse suite almost 3 hours earlier using a secure executive authorization code that only board members could access. Elena's heart started pounding. Gregory had not just accused the wrong guest. He had accused the woman whose name was attached to the very corporate training videos employees watched during orientation. "Gregory," Elena whispered carefully, trying not to draw attention. "I think we should slow down for a second." Gregory turned sharply. "Not now, Elena." His voice sliced through the lobby. "The police are already on their way." Then he pointed toward Naomi again. "And until they arrive, she stays right there." Naomi finally looked directly at him. Calm, controlled, almost unreadable. "You still have not checked the cameras," she said quietly. Gregory laughed once without humor. "I do not need cameras when a guest identifies the suspect." The word suspect landed heavily. Nearby, a woman recording on her phone lowered it slightly, her expression tightening. Naomi folded her hands in front of her hoodie pocket. "So one accusation is enough for you?" Gregory stepped closer. "When expensive jewelry disappears, and someone matching your description leaves the executive floor, yes." Matching your description. Elena noticed the phrase immediately. So did several people standing nearby. Nobody said anything, but the tension shifted. Naomi had heard versions of that sentence her entire life. At 19, security at an upscale mall in Atlanta stopped her outside a designer store because a clerk claimed she looked like someone who had stolen sunglasses earlier that day. They searched her shopping bags in front of strangers while customers stared through display windows pretending not to watch. She remembered the humiliation more than the accusation itself. The feeling of becoming suspicious the moment she entered a room. And now here it was again 25 years later inside a hotel chain she had spent a decade building from the ground up. Elena glanced toward Naomi again and noticed something strange. Naomi was not nervous. She was observing. Every employee, every reaction, every sentence, like someone conducting an audit instead of surviving a confrontation. Then the lobby doors slid open and 2 uniformed police officers stepped inside out of the cold rain, while Gregory Hale smiled with the confidence of a man who still believed the next 5 minutes would end in his favor. The 2 officers entered the lobby with rain still clinging to their dark jackets, and immediately the atmosphere changed again. People stepped aside instinctively, creating space in the center of the marble floor where Naomi Carter still stood without moving. Officer Daniel Ruiz glanced first at Gregory Hale, then at Naomi, then briefly around the crowded lobby where at least 6 phones were visibly recording. Gregory rushed forward before either officer could speak. "Thank God you are here," he said quickly. "We have a theft situation involving one of our VIP guests." Officer Ruiz kept his tone neutral. "What exactly was reported stolen?" "A diamond necklace," Gregory answered immediately. "Estimated value around $80,000. Several guests exchanged looks at the number. Naomi remained silent. The younger officer beside Ruiz, a woman named Officer Kelly Morgan, shifted her eyes toward Naomi with visible uncertainty. "And what evidence do you have connecting her to it?" Gregory pointed again. "Witness statement. She was seen leaving the executive floor minutes before the guest discovered the necklace missing." Naomi finally spoke. "Did anyone actually see me take anything?" Gregory ignored her question again. "She has been avoiding cooperation this entire time." Elena Brooks nearly looked sick standing behind the front desk. She wanted to speak. Naomi could see it in her face. But fear held her there. Fear of Gregory. Fear of losing her job. Fear of saying the wrong thing publicly while cameras rolled. Naomi understood that fear too. At 28, she once sat in a corporate boardroom while executives questioned whether luxury travelers would trust a black woman running a hospitality company. Nobody used the word race directly. They never did. They hid it behind words like image and perception and branding. One investor actually smiled while saying, "Guests expect a certain look from leadership." Naomi remembered sitting there perfectly still while they discussed her like she was not even in the room. And now here Gregory Hale stood doing the exact same thing in a different suit. Officer Ruiz turned calmly toward Naomi. "Ma'am, do you have identification on you?" Naomi nodded once and slowly reached into her hoodie pocket. Gregory instantly interrupted. "Watch her hands." The sentence hit the room like broken glass. Officer Morgan shot Gregory a sharp look while several guests visibly recoiled at the tone. Naomi paused for half a second before pulling out a slim black wallet and handing over her Illinois driver's license without argument. Officer Ruiz examined it quietly. Then his eyes flickered upward again toward Naomi's face. "Naomi Carter," he repeated slowly. Gregory folded his arms. "Fake identification is common in these cases." Naomi looked directly at him. "You seem very experienced accusing people who look like me." The lobby went silent again. Not loud silence. Heavy silence. The kind that makes people suddenly aware of every word they have already said. A woman near the concierge desk whispered, "Oh my God." Gregory forced out a laugh that sounded thinner than before. "This has nothing to do with race." Naomi tilted her head slightly. "Then why did you decide I was guilty before checking a single camera angle?" Gregory opened his mouth, but nothing came out immediately. That hesitation was the first visible crack. Officer Morgan noticed it too. So did the guests filming. Elena looked down at her computer screen again, then back at Naomi. Her breathing grew shallow, because now she realized something. Worse than Gregory accusing the wrong person. He had accused the one person in the building who could destroy every career standing behind that front desk. The lobby no longer sounded like a luxury hotel. It sounded like a courtroom moments before a verdict. Phones remained raised in nearly every direction, while whispers rolled through the marble space in restless waves. Gregory Hale could feel control slipping, and that made his voice sharper every time he spoke. "Officer, she still has not explained why she was on the executive floor," he insisted, standing beside the front desk with his arms folded tightly across his chest. Naomi Carter looked at him with the same calm expression that had unsettled him from the beginning. "I do not answer to accusations," she said evenly, "especially ones built on assumptions." Gregory scoffed loudly. "There you go again, avoiding simple questions." Officer Ruiz glanced toward him. "Sir, let us handle this." But Gregory was already too deep into the performance. Too committed. Too certain the room still belonged to him. "This hotel has standards," he said, his voice echoing beneath the chandelier light. "We cannot allow people wandering restricted areas pretending they belong there." The sentence hung in the air like smoke. Several guests visibly reacted this time. A younger black man, standing near the elevators, frowned immediately. A woman recording under her breath muttered, "Pretending they belong?" Even Officer Morgan's expression hardened slightly. Naomi noticed every shift in the room. The crowd was beginning to hear what Gregory really meant underneath the polished corporate language. She had seen this transformation before. At 31, during the early years of building Crown Meridian Hospitality, she attended a real estate conference in Dallas where a hotel executive mistook her for catering staff and handed her an empty tray while asking for fresh drinks. When she corrected him, the man laughed nervously and said, "Well, you do not exactly look like ownership." Naomi remembered smiling politely then too. Not because it did not hurt, because she learned long ago that calmness made people reveal more than anger ever could. Behind the desk, Elena Brooks finally stepped forward. "Gregory," she said carefully, her voice low but firm, "maybe we should review the executive access logs before this goes any further." Gregory turned toward her instantly. "Stay out of this." Elena hesitated, then glanced toward Naomi again. Naomi did not nod, did not signal. She simply watched. Gregory straightened his tie and addressed the officers again. "The guest who reported the theft is extremely important to this property. We cannot take chances." Naomi's eyes narrowed slightly for the first time all night. "Interesting," she said softly. "So importance determines who gets believed." Gregory exhaled sharply. "Do not twist my words." But the damage was already done. A woman near the bar spoke up loudly enough for others to hear. "She has been calm this entire time, and nobody has shown any evidence." Another guest added, "Did anyone even check the cameras yet?" The pressure in the lobby shifted again. Slowly, subtly, like a tide turning. Gregory felt it immediately, so he pushed harder. "People like her know how to manipulate situations exactly like this," he snapped. The second the words left his mouth, silence crashed over the room. Complete silence. Even the rain outside seemed quieter. Officer Morgan looked directly at Gregory now. "People like her?" she repeated carefully. Gregory realized too late what he had just exposed. "That is not what I meant," he said quickly. But nobody believed him anymore. Naomi folded her hands calmly in front of her. "No," she replied softly. "That is exactly what you meant." And behind the front desk, Elena Brooks slowly reached beneath her monitor. picked up the internal executive hotline phone reserved only for ownership emergencies, and dialed a number she had never touched before in her entire career. Elena Brooks held the executive hotline phone so tightly her knuckles turned pale against the black receiver. The private line almost never rang. Most employees in the building did not even know it existed. Yet now the tiny red indicator light blinked steadily beside her trembling hand, while the entire lobby stood frozen in a tension so thick it seemed to slow the air itself. Gregory Hale noticed her too late. "Elena," he snapped sharply, "hang that phone up right now." She looked at him for a long second, fear and disbelief fighting across her face. Then she quietly said, "I cannot do that anymore." Gregory stared at her like she had just betrayed him publicly. "Excuse me." But before Elena could answer, the phone line clicked alive. A calm female voice filled the silence behind the desk. "Executive Operations. This is Vanessa Reed." Elena swallowed hard. "Ma'am," she said carefully, glancing toward Naomi Carter, "I believe there is an active ownership escalation happening at the Chicago Crown Meridian location." The entire lobby seemed to stop breathing. Gregory laughed once in disbelief. "Ownership escalation?" He shook his head toward the officers. "This is ridiculous. She manipulated one of my employees." Naomi remained still near the espresso bar, hands folded calmly in front of her dark hoodie. But her eyes shifted slightly toward Elena for the first time all night. Not surprise. Recognition. Vanessa Reed's voice sharpened instantly through the receiver. "Who initiated the escalation?" Elena answered quietly. "Naomi Carter." The effect was immediate. Officer Ruiz looked down again at the identification card in his hand. Officer Morgan slowly turned toward Naomi with a completely different expression now. Gregory forced out another laugh, louder this time, but it sounded hollow. "No," he said quickly. "No chance." He pointed toward Naomi again, as though volume alone could erase reality. "She is lying." Vanessa's voice remained perfectly controlled. "Put the call on speaker." Elena obeyed. Suddenly, the executive operator's voice echoed through the marble lobby. "This is Vanessa Reed, Chief Executive Operations Director for Crown Meridian Hospitality. All staff members are instructed to suspend escalation procedures immediately." Gregory stepped forward furiously. "You cannot seriously be entertaining this." Vanessa ignored him completely. "Ms. Carter, would you like corporate protocol activated?" Naomi finally moved. Slowly, deliberately, she stepped away from the espresso bar and into the center of the lobby where every phone camera now pointed directly at her. "Yes," she said softly. "Activate Protocol 7. A cold silence swept through the room. Gregory frowned. What the hell is Protocol 7? Elena knew. Every executive-level manager knew. It was the emergency authority reserved only for ownership intervention involving discrimination complaints, legal exposure, or executive misconduct. Nobody had ever seen it used in person. Vanessa's voice became crisp and immediate. Protocol 7 initiated at 8:27 p.m. Central Time. Effective immediately, all employee access logs, surveillance footage, internal communications, and guest interaction records at this location are now under executive review. Gregory's confidence flickered visibly for the first time. "This is insane," he muttered. Naomi looked directly at him. "No," she replied calmly. "What is insane is accusing someone of theft before checking facts." Gregory opened his mouth again, but stopped when several phones near the elevators tilted toward him like spotlights. The crowd had changed completely now. People were no longer watching Naomi suspiciously. They were watching Gregory. A businessman near the lobby bar quietly shook his head. A woman recording whispered, "He just destroyed himself." Officer Morgan stepped closer to Naomi. "Ma'am," she said respectfully now. "Are you saying you own this property?" Naomi met her eyes evenly. "Not just this property." Then behind the front desk, computer monitors across the lobby suddenly flashed with the same bright red message at the exact same moment. "Executive audit active. Employee access monitored." And Gregory Hale's face lost color instantly. Gregory Hale stared at the glowing red warning on the lobby monitors like the building itself had suddenly turned against him. "Executive audit active. Employee access monitored." The message reflected faintly across the polished marble floor, while guests continued recording from every angle. The atmosphere had completely changed now. 15 minutes earlier, Naomi Carter had stood alone under suspicion. Now the suspicion was moving toward Gregory instead. "This does not prove anything," he said quickly, though his voice lacked the confidence it carried before. "Anybody can fake some corporate call." Naomi looked at him steadily. "You are still talking instead of checking the cameras." Gregory ignored her again because deep down he already understood the danger of what those cameras might show. Officer Ruiz handed Naomi's identification card back, with noticeably more care this time. "Ma'am," he said cautiously, "can you clarify your role with this property?" Naomi slipped the license back into her wallet without breaking eye contact with Gregory. "I founded Crown Meridian Hospitality 11 years ago," she answered calmly. "This hotel was our third acquisition." A ripple moved through the crowd instantly. One guest near the elevators lowered his phone slightly and whispered, "Oh my God." Another man pulled up a search page on his tablet, then looked back toward Naomi with widened eyes. Elena Brooks felt almost dizzy behind the front desk, because now everyone in the lobby was reaching the same realization she had discovered several minutes earlier. Gregory Hale had publicly accused the owner of his entire hotel chain of theft. Gregory shook his head immediately. "No, no chance." He forced out another strained laugh. "The Naomi Carter does not walk around in a hoodie carrying coffee by herself." Naomi's expression never changed. "That is exactly why I do it." Silence followed. Not confusion this time. Understanding. Naomi stepped slowly toward the reception desk while the sound of rain tapped softly against the massive front windows behind her. 3 months ago, she said evenly, corporate received multiple complaints involving racial profiling at this property. Gregory's face tightened instantly. Those complaints were resolved. Elena looked down sharply. Naomi noticed. "No," Naomi replied softly. "They were buried." Every employee standing behind the desk suddenly looked uncomfortable. A young bellman slowly stepped backward. One receptionist stared at the floor. Officer Morgan crossed her arms quietly and watched Gregory with growing skepticism. Naomi continued walking until she stood directly across from Gregory at the front desk. "I came here tonight because I wanted to see who this hotel became when ownership was not watching." Gregory swallowed hard, but tried to recover. "This is ridiculous. We were protecting our guests." Naomi tilted her head slightly. "Interesting." Her voice remained calm, but every word cut cleaner now. "Because nobody protected me." Gregory opened his mouth again, but the elevator near the lobby lounge suddenly opened with a soft chime. A sharply dressed man in a navy overcoat stepped out alongside 2 corporate legal staff, carrying tablets and folders. The second Elena saw them, her stomach dropped. Gregory recognized them too. Richard Lawson, Senior Vice President of Operations for Crown Meridian Hospitality. Gregory's face drained of color almost instantly. Richard walked across the lobby with the speed of someone responding to a fire. Guests stepped aside automatically as he approached Naomi. Then, without hesitation, without confusion, without even glancing toward Gregory first, Richard stopped directly in front of Naomi Carter and said clearly enough for the entire lobby to hear, "Ms. Carter, Executive Response Team is now fully active. Legal and corporate compliance are standing by for your instruction." The room went dead silent, and Gregory Hale finally realized this was no misunderstanding he could talk his way out of. Richard Lawson's arrival shattered whatever illusion of authority Gregory Hale still believed he had left. The senior vice president moved through the lobby with 2 corporate compliance officers close behind him, their tablets already glowing with live audit reports pulled directly from the hotel system. Every employee behind the reception desk straightened instinctively the second they saw him. Gregory attempted a nervous smile. "Richard, thank God you are here," he said quickly, forcing confidence back into his voice. "This woman has been causing a major disruption, and stop talking." Richard's words hit the lobby with brutal calmness. Gregory froze mid-sentence. Naomi Carter remained perfectly composed near the center of the marble floor, while guests continued filming openly now. No one was hiding their phones anymore. Richard turned fully toward Naomi. "Ms. Carter," he said respectfully, "corporate security has already begun reviewing surveillance footage from the executive level." Naomi nodded once, and Richard glanced toward the compliance officer beside him, who tapped rapidly across a tablet screen before answering. "The footage shows Ms. Carter never entered the guest suite where the necklace was reported missing." A stunned murmur swept through the lobby immediately. Gregory blinked hard. That is impossible. The compliance officer continued without emotion. At 7:58 p.m., Ms. Carter exited elevator 3 and entered the executive lounge for less than 4 minutes before returning downstairs. Officer Ruiz folded his arms. So there is no footage connecting her to the missing item at all? Correct, the compliance officer answered. Gregory's face tightened. Then the guest must have mistaken the floor. Naomi finally looked directly at him again. Interesting, she said softly. Now you believe in mistakes. Several guests exchanged uncomfortable looks. A young man near the lobby bar whispered, "This guy is done." Gregory immediately tried another angle. Fine, he snapped. Maybe she did not take the necklace herself, but her behavior was suspicious from the beginning. Officer Morgan frowned. Suspicious how? Gregory hesitated for a fraction too long. She was wandering restricted areas dressed like. He stopped himself. Too late. Naomi finished the sentence for him quietly. Like someone you did not think belonged here. The silence that followed was devastating. Richard Lawson slowly turned toward Gregory now, with visible disappointment. Did you accuse ownership of theft before reviewing surveillance footage? Gregory swallowed hard. We were responding quickly to protect the property. No, Naomi replied calmly. You were responding emotionally to my appearance. Gregory's jaw tightened. That is not fair. Naomi stepped closer to the reception desk, her voice still level, still controlled, which somehow made every word land harder. You saw a black woman in a hoodie and decided she fit your version of a criminal faster than she fit your version of ownership. Nobody moved. Nobody interrupted. Even the rain outside seemed distant now. Elena Brooks stood behind the desk with tears gathering in her eyes because she knew Naomi was not only talking about tonight. She was talking about every complaint buried under phrases like guest concern and employee discretion and security protocol. Naomi looked briefly around the lobby at the guests filming, the employees staring silently, the officers standing uncertainly between two collapsing versions of the truth. Then she spoke again. This was never about a necklace. Gregory laughed nervously. Now you are twisting everything. Naomi shook her head slowly. No, the necklace was just the excuse. The real accusation happened the second I walked through those doors. Richard Lawson exhaled quietly and turned toward the compliance officers. Pull every discrimination complaint tied to this property from the last 24 months. Gregory's eyes widened instantly. Richard, wait. But Richard ignored him completely. And then one of the compliance officers looked down at the audit feed on her tablet and said the sentence that caused Gregory Hale's face to completely collapse. Sir, she said carefully, we already found 7 prior incidents involving guest profiling under his supervision. The words hit Gregory Hale harder than any accusation all night. 7 prior incidents. The number seemed to echo across the lobby while every employee behind the reception desk stared at the floor like eye contact itself had become dangerous. Gregory immediately shook his head. Those complaints were never proven, he snapped quickly. Guests misunderstand situations all the time. One of the compliance officers looked up from her tablet without emotion. 3 of the complaints specifically mention racial profiling. Gregory laughed again, but now the sound carried panic beneath it. This is insane. We deal with security issues every day in this business. Naomi Carter stood quietly a few feet away, watching him unravel piece by piece. She had seen this moment before too. The exact instant confidence collapses into desperation. At 36, she once terminated a regional director in Miami after hidden reports revealed. Minority guests were being charged excessive damage fees compared to white guests staying in identical rooms. The director spent 20 minutes insisting it was coincidence. By the end of the meeting, he was blaming software errors and communication gaps and employee confusion. Different excuses. Same pattern. Naomi understood something Gregory still did not. People rarely think they are the villain inside their own story. Officer Ruiz shifted his stance slightly and looked toward Gregory. Did you ever actually verify the theft claim before accusing her publicly? Gregory hesitated. That hesitation alone answered the question. Naomi spoke softly into the silence. No, he verified my appearance. Several guests murmured immediately. A woman near the elevators lowered her phone and shook her head slowly. Wow. Gregory pointed toward Naomi again, but his hand no longer looked steady. You are twisting this entire situation into something racial because it benefits you. Naomi's expression remained calm. No, she replied. You made it racial the moment you decided I looked more believable as a suspect than as an owner. Richard Lawson stepped forward beside Naomi now, his voice measured and cold. Gregory, did you instruct employees to prevent Ms. Carter from leaving the lobby? Gregory glanced around desperately. We were securing the situation until police arrived. Officer Morgan immediately frowned. Without evidence. Gregory turned toward her sharply. The necklace was missing. And now? Naomi asked quietly. A heavy silence followed again, because everyone suddenly realized nobody had mentioned the necklace in several minutes. One compliance officer touched her earpiece briefly while reviewing an incoming message on her tablet. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Then she looked up toward Richard. Sir, she said carefully. Corporate security just received an update from the guest who reported the necklace missing. Gregory immediately straightened. Finally, the compliance officer continued. The necklace was found inside the guest's personal travel case. Silence detonated across the lobby. Complete. Crushing. Gregory's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Several guests reacted instantly. One man laughed under his breath in disbelief. Another whispered, "Oh, this is bad." Naomi never moved, never smiled. Somehow that made the moment even heavier. Officer Ruiz slowly exhaled and glanced toward Gregory with visible frustration now. So there was never a theft. Gregory looked trapped between anger and fear. The guest must have overlooked it earlier. Naomi tilted her head slightly. And yet you were ready to hand me to police before anyone checked twice. Gregory tried again. You were behaving suspiciously. Naomi stepped closer until only the reception desk separated them. You keep using that word because you cannot say the real one out loud. Gregory's face flushed immediately. Behind him, several employees looked openly uncomfortable now. Elena Brooks felt tears forming again because the entire lobby was finally seeing what employees inside the hotel had quietly witnessed for years. Naomi lowered her voice almost to a whisper, but every person in the room still heard it clearly. You did not see danger tonight. She paused. You saw a black woman with power you could not recognize. And at that exact moment, Gregory Hale's employee badge clipped to his suit jacket suddenly emitted a sharp electronic tone followed by a blinking red light. The sharp electronic tone from Gregory Hale's badge cut through the lobby like an alarm no one could ignore. Every eye dropped instantly toward the blinking red light attached to his jacket pocket. Gregory grabbed the badge instinctively and stared at it in disbelief while the tiny screen flashed two brutal words over and over. Access revoked. The silence in the lobby became almost unbearable. Naomi Carter did not react immediately. She simply watched him the same way she had watched the entire night unfold from the moment he first pointed at her across the marble floor. Gregory looked toward Richard Lawson in panic. Richard, this is unnecessary. Richard's expression never changed. Corporate compliance has suspended your managerial access pending investigation. Gregory laughed nervously, but the sound broke apart halfway through. Pending investigation? Over a misunderstanding. Naomi finally spoke again, her voice soft enough to force everyone to listen harder. A misunderstanding does not call police on innocent people. Gregory turned toward her sharply. You are acting like I committed some crime. Naomi's eyes held his steadily. No, she answered. I am acting like you destroyed someone's dignity in public before checking a single fact. The words settled heavily over the room. Several employees behind the front desk looked visibly shaken now. One receptionist quietly removed her hotel name badge and set it on the counter as though it suddenly weighed too much to wear. Officer Morgan crossed her arms and glanced toward Gregory. Sir, you escalated a false theft accusation without evidence, publicly detained a guest, and involved law enforcement before reviewing surveillance footage. That is not a minor issue. Gregory's face tightened with desperation. I was protecting the hotel. Naomi shook her head slowly. No, you were protecting your assumptions. Near the elevators, a guest quietly said. She never even raised her voice once. Another answered, that is what makes this worse. Naomi understood exactly what they meant, because she had learned years ago that calmness unsettled people more than anger. At 40 years old, during a negotiation in Los Angeles, a hotel investor once slammed his hand against a conference table and accused her of being too aggressive after she challenged contract terms. 10 minutes later, the same man complimented a white executive for being assertive while repeating Naomi's exact argument word for word. She remembered sitting there silently realizing something painful. For some people, confidence looked threatening the second it came from a black woman. And tonight Gregory Hale had proven that lesson never really left America. Richard Lawson turned toward the compliance officers again. Have all executive review findings been documented? Yes, sir. One answered immediately, including employee statements, surveillance logs, witness recordings, and police response records. Gregory looked stunned. Witness recordings? The woman near the elevators lifted her phone slightly. Hey, a lot of us filmed this. Gregory's shoulders visibly dropped for the first time all night. Because now there was no private version of events left to hide behind. No rewritten report. No cleaned-up narrative. The entire lobby had become a witness. Naomi stepped slowly toward the front desk one last time. Do you know the saddest part of this? She asked quietly. Gregory looked up at her, but said nothing. Naomi continued. You never once asked who I was. Gregory swallowed hard. Naomi's voice remained calm, but each sentence felt sharper now. You saw my skin color before you saw my humanity. You saw my hoodie before you saw my position. And the moment that necklace went missing, your mind built a criminal before your system checked a fact. Nobody in the lobby moved. Even Richard Lawson looked unsettled hearing it spoken so plainly. Naomi glanced briefly around the room at the employees, the guests, the officers, the glowing phone still recording every second. Then she delivered the sentence that froze Gregory Hale completely where he stood. You did not humiliate me tonight, she said softly. You exposed yourself.